Welcome back. You're watching the morning news right here on CNN News 18. Our next story comes in to us from the airport right here in New Delhi. Multiple reports coming in from passengers over the last few days continue of scenes of chaos that abound within the IGI Terminal 3. That's the Indira Gandhi International Airport Terminal 3 right here in New Delhi. There's been an unprecedented increase in waiting times. Perhaps because of winter season travel. We'll connect with the reporter to understand more on that. But what passengers on the ground are reporting are long wait times when it comes to the security clearance area, in particular lines that wind around 6, 7 or 8 times. Multiple complaints have come through about this. Against this and against that backdrop, I believe the Delhi International Airport Authority Limited has also released a 4-point action plan to tackle this issue along with the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Remember, a few days ago, you'd also had the Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiradtidya Scindia visit the premises. It doesn't, however, seem to have led to too much of an improvement within the situation, according to those who are present on the scene. Long lines at immigration and security, unorganized checking, chaos at the lounges. All of this is what has been pointed towards. Now, my colleague Pallavi Ghosh is with us right now to bring us a lot more in terms of context. Pallavi, I believe that T3 had already reduced the number of flights just to help in the decongestion. So there used to be 22 flights per hour. Now I believe they've reduced it down to 19 flights per hour. Still, I believe some airlines are telling passengers to come more than 3 hours in advance for domestic flights, which is unheard of. Could you bring us more context?
No, but clearly the decongestion of flights, as the Ministry of Civil Aviation calls it, has not been enough. So there have been a slew of measures which really have been outlined both with the airport authority as well as the Civil Aviation Ministry. And very quickly, of course, apart from more X-ray machines, because the feeling is that even if you have a Digi Yatra app, which essentially means you have that app on your mobile phone with a boarding pass and it's a smooth sail to enter the airport. But once you enter the airport and you reach the security check-in, that's where the problem begins. Huge rows, and all of us who've traveled have seen that those trays where we are supposed to put all our stuff there has to be screened. There was a paucity of X-ray machines. That's the feedback they got, that there are 14 X-ray machines. They've decided to increase by 2 more, that is 16 X-ray machines. Also, 2 gates which are normally reserved for crew and VVIP entrance has now going to be opened up for passengers so that there are no waiting queues outside the airport when you want to go inside. Also, the lounge demolition is going to be put on hold. So, and of course, debunching of flights, as the Aviation Ministry calls it. For this, they'll have to work along with the airlines. This is a peak tourist season. The holiday season is already about to begin. So it's going to be very, very difficult, really, for debunching of those flights. But clearly seeing the passenger chaos and complaints on the social media timeline, we have the Civil Aviation Minister, even as we speak, inside the airport to check for himself what the situation is and whether those measures which have been announced are actually working on the ground.
Pallavi, I just want to ask you, though we are seeing a seasonal increase in the number of passengers, when we take a look at the data that is available, is this number of passengers more than T3 has seen in the years in the past before COVID? Do we have any information there?
Oh, yes. In fact, if you have been looking at the statistics given out by Aviation Ministry, very often in the Parliament, they have seen a huge surge in travel movement. And the reason also why they are saying so really, Toya, is because one, the COVID fear is over. People want to go out. Second thing is those who are not traveling, and now they really want to go out. And, you know, it's very heartening for the government also, the green shooting they were calling of the aviation sector. That is why airports being opened up, no flights, more flights being announced, new airlines being launched. This has really been keeping in mind the surge in passenger traffic. And as I said, I mean, the peak tourist season begins now from December to January. And therefore, while it's usually the case in T3 at this point of time, but this time the complaints are unprecedented because there are more flights which are going in. And mind you, Toya, the complaints are largely coming in from T3, where the bunch of the flights go in. When I spoke to some people traveling by T1, for example, they say it's been a smooth sail so far.
Right, right. Pallavi, I saw this myself on Friday. I just want to understand from you very quickly before we let you go. Since most passengers are complaining that the length and duration has really increased when it comes to the security checks, can we just go back to what you were saying with the changes? One change I saw within the four that you'd pointed to was very specific to security checks. As you'd said, the increase in X-ray machines present in the area. Am I incorrect? Were there other changes to that specific problem too?
Well, yes, you're absolutely correct, Toya. 14 X-ray machines, we all know when we go and travel, it's going to be increased now to 16. That is 2 more X-ray machines. Whether it's going to be able to control the crowds, that of course remains to be seen. You know, there are those huge trays. There's also this complaint from passengers that it's not passenger friendly. You have passengers fighting with each other because they want to put their tray. There are complaints of airlines shutting down their boarding gates because a passenger has not been able to reach the gates because of the intense security check. This is just one of the measures. I think this is still one of the few measures which can seem very practical. When you talk about debunching on flights, it's going to be very, very difficult at this point of time. What they essentially want to do is at the peak time of takeoff, like in the morning, late evening, if that can be scattered through the day, I don't know how feasible that's going to be. Also, the entry into the airport. There are 2 gates we all know. Gate number 1, for example, is actually a gate which is restricted only to crew entry. That is now going to be opened up for passengers to reduce the number of people or in queue outside the entry of the airport.
And Pallavi, just bring our audiences a little bit more context because Delhi does also have the T1 airport. What kind of travel usually takes place from the T1 airport? Could we see a redistribution of planes there too, or will that possibly not be necessary?
Well, I mean, most of the aircrafts are now increasingly going to T3. I mean, you talk about, aircrafts like, and it also a lot depends on the destination you're traveling to. I mean, most of the flights to Mumbai, Bengaluru, the metro cities are largely taking off to T3. Airlines, for example, Vistara, some Indigo flights, of course, Air India at this point of time, they're all going to T3. So the feeling is that the bunch of aircrafts taking off or the passenger entry at T3 or the passenger footfall is much, much higher in T3 in comparison to T1 and T2. As I said, Toya, when I did speak to one of my friends who took the T1 air route, they said it's been absolutely smooth over there. There's no intense passenger traffic. The waiting queue is not too long. So most of the complaints, if you look at the social media timeline, are actually coming to the T3.
Okay, and Pallavi, since we do know that the winter session of the Parliament is on, has this been brought up in Parliament yet? Can we expect this to come up in Parliament since it isn't specifically of a political nature?
Yes, but I certainly hope so because people's issues also need to be taken up inside Parliament. So far, this has not been. But, you know, over the weekend, the complaints have surged. So I'm expecting and hoping that certainly some of those complaints or points will be taken up inside Parliament as well. As I said, I mean, the Civil Aviation Minister is himself on it. His hands on it. He held a press conference also in Indore. He's also taking a recce off the airport to figure out whether those measures which have been announced are actually working and how bad the situation really is.
Okay. Pallavi, if I could just ask you once again to walk our audiences through the 4 changes. I believe it was a 4-point plan that you said that the DIAL, which is the Delhi International Airport Limited, and the Civil Aviation Ministry together have introduced. Pallavi, when have these changes been introduced from? Have they already been put into place? Are they going to be put into place?
Well, in fact, if I go to one of the social media timelines of one passenger, they complain, despite the fact that the government says that we've increased it from 14 to 16, actually only 14 are working. 2 X-ray machines are still not working. There have been complaints of faulty X-ray machines whenever we all have been traveling over there. These measures have been announced over the last 2 to 3 days. It's very difficult to say whether this implementation has been largely successful. I think we'll get a word on it once the minister himself comes out, issues a statement. But by and large, the government points out, the Civil Aviation Ministry is also pointing out that these measures have been put into place over the last 2 to 3 days. There has been a slight improvement, though not yet complete.
Okay. Pallavi, thank you for bringing us that context. All right, with that...